Hello again, I am Blunty. I've been thinking about slurs recently, partly because sometimes when I'm just rustling through the internet, keeping myself busy, I'll do things like search Twitter for TERF is a slur, because I like to play a game where I try to figure out if it's an earnest belief, if it's sarcasm, if it's a misunderstanding, or if it's ignorance, because it could be any of them at any time. I want to come back to that TERF thing, but to say what I want to say, I need to close out with that. So I'll ask for a little of your patience and attention, and of course the requisite thumbs and likes and subs and stuff like that. So, yesterday, in the aftermath of the seasonal celebrations that Christianity have done a masterful job of hijacking and co-opting from some of the more paganistic belief structures, not the point of the video, tangent, I was searching for is a slur on Twitter for the usual game of shits and giggles to see who was offended by what, and I caught wind of people reacting to a news story about some dude who said to Joe Biden, a rotting ghoul currently in possession of the highest political office the surely by now ironically named United States of America has. And I say rotting ghoul only insofar as I absolutely believe every last politician on this planet is a liar, a thief, a scumbag, and a literal rotting ghoul appropriating human form. It is not personal, Jimmy Joe Bob, the owner of the most bombs and flying death robots. Please don't send them at me. But they said to this man, the president, and his wife, who was also on the phone with them, "F you, Biden." Now, he said it in a sneaky, cowardly way. He coached it in a meme. What he actually said was, "Let's go, Brandon." Which to some people on the Twitters suggested, well, that's a slur. You said a slur to the president. Naughty. To which the kinds of people who yell, "Let's go, Brandon," while drinking the planet's worst beer and watching cars go in circles for a few hours, reacted in mocking laughter, derision, and screeches and accusations of hypocrisy. How is that a slur, they'd ask, when Trump isn't? I'll answer that for you, I promise, but you'll have to get deeper into this video to have that answer. If you've somehow not tripped over this meme yet, the Let's Go Brandon thing, grew out of a NASCAR race, America's noblest redneck pastime in Alabama, a place in America known and respected for its intelligent and thoughtful populace of kind and generous people, and not at all for being a hive of racist hatred, incest, and people who genuinely believe Jesus Christ would have been super all about assault rifles. That was his jam. At this noble and classy sporting event, attended only by the finest examples of reasoning and thoughtful people, came the chant, "F Joe Biden," over and over again. A spirited and considered political statement, eloquently delivering their thoughts about the leadership of their country and the man behind the leadership of their country. I support this action, and I say this without any sarcasm at all. Telling politicians to f off should be the opening of any and all socio-political discourse. I genuinely believe that. F Joe, f Trump, f the goblin in charge of the place where I live too, f him, f all his mates, and everyone he has ever received even the slightest encouragement from for joining politics. But at this sport of kings, this supreme celebration of the melding of man and machine and how well they can go in circles very, very quickly, and in response to the crowd of thoughtful and sober graduates of higher education, a TV reporter suggested during an interview with the winning car pilot, whose name happened to be Brandon Brown, that the crowd, who had clearly been chanting "Let's go Brandon" the entire time, was a wonderful show of support for this, his very first win in this particular series of car racing competitions. This was perhaps an honest misunderstanding on behalf of the reporter. Perhaps it was a very clever subversion. It doesn't really matter. It was funny either way, and people ran with it because of course they did. We all love a meme. And so the chant of "Let's go Brandon" became the thinnest possible coding for dog whistling for the current president of the United States. But they weren't actually saying his name. And they weren't really saying the naughty word that starts with an F, so it was free of any possibility to be interpreted as deliberately inflammatory or provocative in any way. Except we all know what it means and what they're actually saying behind their secret coward words. It wouldn't have any effect or purpose unless everyone did know what they were actually saying. They're just too much of big, huge pussies to say it out loud. They want to hide behind it. They want to shelter behind the disingenuous deniability of these words. It makes them better people, you see, than people who would just scream, "Fuck Trump," right to his huge orange face, if given the chance, as I indeed would. It is, in fact, like a lot of what happens in certain political circles. They hide behind dog whistles, as we call them, coded wording, all pretending what they actually want is actually supportive of X minority, but that's not what they're really saying if you read between the lines. Shh. When asked about it later, the man who told Joe Biden, "F you," in this super secret code word that Joe Biden is far from ignorant of, this brave man took the old, "It was just a joke, I meant no offense," defensive move, which, as we know, always works perfectly. It's why you can be as shitty as you like to anyone you like, even complete strangers, claim it was a joke or a prank or a social experiment, and then face no repercussions for your actions and hold no responsibility for the thing that you did. It works every time. It's just a joke, bro. He said, "Let's go, Brandon," not "F Joe Biden." Very different things. The reanimated corpse of Joe Biden responded, "I agree, let's go, Brandon," which is smart, so it's probably something someone else told him to do. It's an attempt to suck out all of the perceived power that the user believes these words hold over Joe. It's why the younger generation of non-hetero and gender non-conforming people have taken ownership of words like queer. Now, I've spoken to a few older LGBTQIA+ peeps about this. Some of them still cringe pretty hard at just the sound of the word, because when they were trying to, exist as part of society in their younger days, that word was thrown at them with such hate and bile and not infrequently outright violence. It makes it hard to hear the word even all these many years later. To them, queer carries the stink of when it was used exclusively as a slur. See, a slur isn't a special kind of word, it's a word used in a special way. Some words are slurs and also regular words, like queer, for example. Some words have become exclusively used as slurs, even when they used to mean something else completely. When I was a young boy, it was common for some of my schoolyard chums to insist it was okay for them to use a certain 6-letter F word to describe any man who they suspected of being a little bit too feminine or wanted to kiss other boys. The F word with 2 G's in the middle. You know the one. I'm not going to say it. Because I've never said that word. As I personally truly despise how it was used, and always have. I saw how it was used and I went, nah, that's not who I am. Because I have empathy and I saw how it was being used and the purpose it was being used for, I chose not to use that word. Simple as that. But my fellow prepubescent boy children claimed it was okay to use that word because, you see, it's in the dictionary and it's not a slur at all. It's just, it means a bundle of sticks, bundled together for firewood. It's just a bundle of sticks for fuel. That's all that word means. We can use it freely and openly. Stinky little weasel children trying to get away with it. See, a slur, simply defined, is an insinuation or allegation, an accusation about someone, to someone, that is likely to insult them or damage their reputation in some way. Legally, when you say, "You've slurred me," it means a thing. It doesn't mean you've used a particular word. It is a word meant to harm somebody, a word used with the intent of making someone feel bad, or feel threatened, or feel vulnerable. Now, I'm not against slurs philosophically in their broadest sense, sometimes because they're just a super efficient tool for letting someone know they're unwelcome around you. Shit goblin is a slur, really, when used in an accusatory way, and I'll happily use it that way to very quickly communicate to someone what I think about their general attitude and how welcome they are around me. But that's not quite the same as an institutionalized slur. When I say institutionalized, I mean something that is soaked into such general use it's become broadly understood, a convention of our society. Shit goblin is just, well, it's up to your imagination. It's insulting, sure, and you know it's supposed to be insulting because of the way I said it to you, but it's also kind of a funny mental picture. I used a word earlier that some would consider an institutionalized slur: redneck. Any of my viewers from, most likely, the more southerly states of the USA take issue with that? Yes? No? So it's almost never used in a complimentary way. It's almost always used in a disparaging, dismissive way. A way to say, You are of low intelligence, low class, poorly educated, probably drink way too much and way too often, and probably hold some pretty bigoted views about how non-white and foreign and non-straight people should be treated in the world and the society around you. You call someone a redneck and it's instantly understood what you mean by pretty much the entirety of the English-speaking Western countries, even those that aren't America. All Australians know what redneck means. But here in Australia, we have a similar word that we generally use for the same type of person. But in the usual Aussie way, it's a bit softer in tone and usage and sometimes used tongue-in-cheek. The word is bogan. It means roughly the same thing as redneck or hillbilly or something like that. Some bogans, some rednecks, even happily claim those terms as their own. They're reclaiming it. They're proud of it. They know who they are. And now we come back to TERF. Promised I'd get back. It's, unlike something like bogan, is not just descriptive, but explicitly an acronym describing a socio-political belief framework, if you will. The RF part of TERF stands for Radical Feminist, and that is a super good thing to be, in my opinion. Radical feminism calls for a radical or dramatic or large upheaving of social and economic structures which still unfairly favour blokes, usually white blokes too. And generally sort of make an extremely limited recognition of women's experiences alongside linked issues of institutionalizing inequality and racism and classism and sexual orientation, all that sort of bundled together. I'm a radical feminist. I absolutely believe that people being effed over by the systems we have now in workplaces, in the economy and society at large, need a big old stick taken to them to smash out some very, very old rot. The TE part at the start of TERF though, well, that means these particular radical feminists are trans-exclusionary. They want a level playing field for everybody, just like all radical feminists do. Disadvantaged, disparaged, repressed, suppressed, or at risk, except for, in particular, transgender people who they exclude in certain ways. To varying degrees, depending on the individual we're talking about here, but in general, they tend to think that trans women shouldn't be welcomed necessarily into women-only spaces. They literally exclude trans women. They are trans-exclusionary. It's not a derisive term or language, it's academically descriptive of what they believe. They exclude people who they keep trying to frame up as threats and abusers in waiting, fake women trying to co-opt what it really means to be a woman, they're wolves in sheep's clothing, just waiting for a full moon so they can hunt. They are tricksters and predators, which it's all way more than I'm ready to unpack in this particular video, but I'll link to a vid or two down below that will unpack this kind of opinion. An opinion TERFs hold. Even though trans people are some of the most vulnerable, most often abused, and most at risk and most ignored by the system that these women feel also victimized by. Trans people, trans women in particular, are statistically just way more likely to be the victim than the victimizer, but that's not the way the TERFs want to frame things up. So if you're thinking that all sounds a bit at odds with radical feminism as a whole, in general, then yes, welcome to the issue. That's the problem that we're butting heads over. So anyway, the term TERF started to be used to describe these women in shorthand and their specific belief structure to set them apart from regular radical feminists. Trans-exclusionary radical feminist is a very literal, very accurate way to describe them. But on Twitter, the acronym saves a lot of letters, so we just say TERF or TERFs. So TERFs, when called TERFs in response to TERF things they say and TERF things they do, got a little bit wriggly about people having such a fast way to call them out on the things that they are doing and saying. They felt dismissed by being called TERFs. And rightly so. TERF is a very frequently used thing in a dismissive way. The same kind of way, for example, and let's pick an example well outside of politics, just to be clear of this, but the same kind of way, it's dismissive to call someone a grown-ass man, a grown-ass nerd man, talking about video games and cartoons and comic books on a YouTube or something. To call that person a basement dweller is dismissive. It's a shorthand way to say, dude, you are way too invested in all of this simple entertainment. You've lost perspective on life. Get out of the basement in which you dwell. Go live in the wider world for a bit and take it all a lot less seriously because you're getting... It's dismissive. Your opinion doesn't count. You're a basement dweller. That's the way it's supposed to be used. That's the way it is used. TERF, though not always used this way, usually feels this way to the target. So we now have the situation where literal as described TERFs, get their haunches up about being called TERFs. It's not a word they chose for themselves. So they're calling it a slur. They're calling it a slur because it's being used in the way institutionalized slurs are. Without any self-awareness, slurs like they use. Slurs that start with a T and rhyme with fanny, for example. So, from their perspective, they reason if we, the TERFs, get shit kicked at us when we use words you think are slurs, it stands to reason you are a hypocrite when you use a word we consider to be a slur against us. You're calling us TERFs, that's a slur, you're a hypocrite, because you don't like other slurs. TERF is a slur, and you're using it to silence us, to silence women. All women are silenced when you dismiss us with TERF. And of course, silencing women is absolutely the exact polar opposite of real feminism, being radical or otherwise. It's anti-feminist to call them a TERF. So therefore, you are a part of the problem. You are a part of the patriarchy. You stop it. And bam, job done. Take that. We, the TERFs, are actually the victims, not the people we are attacking and victimizing. It's a trick, of course. Whether they're aware of it or not, it's a weasel word way to squirm out of a very hot spotlight being shone on the things they are saying and doing that other people don't appreciate. A way to redirect the discussion so they don't have to justify themselves. And it's a trick being used ever more frequently these days by everybody. All kinds of groups have realized that if they frame themselves as the victims of cancel culture, or that the other side who claim to be all about freedoms are trying to silence them, well, they're hypocrites and they have no legs upon which to stand. Haha, get owned. We win the argument. But they didn't, because that's all a smokescreen. TERF is absolutely a slur. It might even be on its way to being considered an institutionalized one, given how frequently it's used these days. But that doesn't mean it can't be used. It doesn't mean that the user isn't any more allowed to be offended by the use of other slur terms that they don't like. Because that's some stupid math, TERFs. Doesn't work that way. What it actually means is, if we accept that TERF is in fact a slur, that the user, well, they've got to own it. They've got to own the use of it. Just like if I use the word redneck in a mean-spirited and disparaging way, I have to accept that maybe Billy Bob Blue Ribbon Mango might get pissy at me about it. I don't know why his last name is Mango. Made that up on the fly. Mango? Mango get beer. Watch Cargo Broom. Or maybe when I call them a redneck, they'll laugh and offer me a can of what Americans hilariously call beer and be, oh yeah, fair enough, go fuck a koala. If you're a TERF saying TERFy things and that someone says, that's not what I think you should think, TERF, there's two options you have. You can shut down and withdraw, play victim, and make no progress in the debate whatsoever, or you can say, well, I do think that, so let's have a chat about it. Maybe we can understand one another a bit better and make some progress on the whole discussion. Is that an idealized, unlikely solution? Yup. Are people conditioned to be reactionary and angry online as just a way of when you're having an argument? Yup. Do we live in an online culture that seems to indicate that the loudest and most angry are the winners of the debate? Yup. Does having a chat instead of a fight work when given a chance? Yeah. Is that much, much harder to do than it sounds? Yup. Does being hard mean it's not worth trying? Nope. And most of all, pretending that "Let's Go Brandon" isn't a slur or isn't meant to be a direct and targeted insult to an individual and any dopey fucker that still thinks politicians can do anything worthwhile to save this boiling mud ball is dishonest at best. And you know it's dishonest. Use a slur, sure, but take responsibility for the words you use, or indeed, perhaps more importantly, the words you choose not to use. There's words I have very carefully not used in this video, and words I have bleeped out, because while I'm fine with saying fuck once, maybe twice in a video, YouTube doesn't like frequent use of that word, so I've bleeped out my frequent use of it for sanitizing the video a bit as far as the algorithm is concerned. There's other words in this video I've very carefully not used at all. I've alluded to them. I'm not scared to use them in case I offend someone or get myself in hot water in cancel culture, whatever. No, I choose not to use them, not out of fear, but out of respect. I like words that get some people all huffy. As an Australian, I use a word very frequently that to American ears in particular is very harsh. And I probably shouldn't say it at all in a YouTube video. But in my country, it's used as both the harshest of the harsh words and a term of familiarity, endearment, often, but not exclusively, among blokes. Blokey blokes. How you doing, you? It's a big, huge swear word that offends some people, a lot of people, yep. Is there a fair argument to be made that it's even a bit misogynist? Maybe, but then do we have to have the same conversation about calling someone a dickhead? Probably, maybe. Yeah. Language is powerful, fun, and a tool to be used with care and precision, or at the absolute minimum, with awareness and honesty about what you're saying and how you are saying it. I've said this before in other videos, but language is literally the most powerful tool we as humans have ever created. We wouldn't be what we are without that tool. Used clumsily, lazily, used in the wrong way, it can be extremely destructive. Used carefully, used deliberately, used thoughtfully, it can be an incredibly powerful tool of communication, of change, of understanding. And that's all I'm really getting at here. A slur is a slur is a slur. Not all slurs are equal. Some are institutionalized, some are not. Understanding the differences between them, which ones you are comfortable with using in which situation, that's up to you. Which ones you use and expect not to be called out on, that's also up to you. You know how people are going to react. That's why you choose those words. If I call you a shit goblin, it's with the intent that you will be offended by it. That was the purpose of me choosing that word. I didn't accidentally say it. I don't have Tourette's. But if you are offended by it and say, hey, no, you're the shit goblin, then I can't pretend to be the victim there. I go, well, I've obviously offended you. That's what I meant to do. Or, sorry, it was just a joke, maybe. Anyway, hopefully this has been interesting for you. Hopefully I've been even-handed enough to get the people who would usually just get outraged and click away and leave a mean comment without actually listening to the video, which very often happens when I talk about this kind of political topic, because it's just the way the internet works and attention spans are very small. But hopefully I've done a decent enough job to hang on to a few more of you who would philosophically be on the other side of the fence from me about this, perhaps, or you thought you might be. Let me know how good of a job I did, I guess. Thanks for watching. I am Blunty. We'll catch you next time. And thank you as always to the patrons scrolling up above. Shit goblin. I love that word.